working on a project specifically related to personal goodwill and enterprise goodwill. And, I do a lot of appraisal work in divorce litigation, and personal goodwill comes up. And if any of you have ever heard me in December of 22, I discussed on valuation products and services a holistic approach where we look at the subject company, the industry, and identify intangibles across, as opposed to just jumping, putting the cart ahead of the horse and saying, well, it's definitely personal goodwill and this is how I value it. Okay. So in doing that, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Mr. Zyla. You got to pick up fair value measurement if you want to get into it. I'm on page 106. I highlighted some things I want to bring to everyone's attention. Notice that word, if intangible assets representing knowledge advantage through proprietary know-how, think about personal goodwill, relationships with important customers, customer lists, or expertise held by key employees, an assembled workforce, then the entity should be able to exploit that knowledge to achieve a competitive advantage in the marketplace. So think about that. If you have an asset, that asset has a benefit, right? What is the competitive advantage? The personal goodwill? Is the personal goodwill the competitive advantage, or is it a combination of assets? Questions we need to be talking about prior to then just valuing. There's an assessment of the entity. The knowledge advantage becomes an economic advantage through enhanced margins. If any of you have ever heard me talk about the double dip phenomenon when it comes to the carve out and personal goodwill, that makes absolute sense. Those enhanced margins, right, are through those economic benefits. And think about it. If you have key customer relationships, well, your margins are probably going to be higher than to comparable companies because you're not spending as much on marketing and selling. You might have enhanced revenues because you don't need to reduce your time if you're in a professional service firm. Let's think about another company, an assembled workforce. You don't have the recruiting, the retention, the turnover, the training cost with that. So there's different ways to look at the financials, but unless you understand the business and the entity, you wouldn't. Two other things, just real quickly going through this that I think are important. Zyla talks about a book, Intangibles, Management, Measurement, and Reporting. Barak Lev describes fundamental value drivers that are unique to intangible assets. He calls them non-rivalry scalability and networking. So, non-rivalry scalability refers to the ability to accommodate a multitude of users at any time. An intangible asset can have multiple users as opposed to a fixed asset, a microphone, right? Well, I guess multiple users could use a microphone, but a laptop, right? There's only one person that could use that. The network effect simply is that value of the intangible asset increases as the number of users increases. And the example they talk about is software. I think to kind of end this, and again, I want to highlight definitions of intangible assets. I think there's a lot of focus on, personal goodwill, but let's take a step back. Let's truly understand what an intangible asset is, what it does, type of a thing. The use of an intangible asset typically does not have any physical limitations. The only limitation is the size of the market for that asset. That's another important concept. So, hopefully everyone, if you are listening to this, you're interested in intangible assets and valuation of those. And if you do divorce litigation, truly understand the intangible asset valuation side of it. I would recommend picking up Fair Value Measurement by Mark Zyla, Economic Basis of Intangible Assets. Have a great day, all.